Joining us now for his insights is political science professor from De La Salle University, Renato de Castro. Professor, thank you so much for joining us. So we heard in that report of David Santos, 4 new EDCA sites, but they have not been named. Where are these 4 strategic sites you think located? Zambales, Cagayan, Isabela, and Palawan?
Chances are yes, northern Luzon. I think this has something to do with possible contingencies at the Northeast Asia, north of Luzon, and of course, to be very specific, and this is no less than Ambassador Babes Romualdez mentioned this in the case of possible armed contingency and the Taiwan Strait, and of course, you have another site, on the western coast of Palawan. And that is, of course, directly facing the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea. I think this is something to do with, the current tension with regards to the, China's maritime expansion into the Philippines exclusive economic zone.
So what do you think, Professor, will be in these areas? Zambales, Cagayan, Isabela, and Palawan. Will they be air bases, naval bases, ports?
When you talk about air bases, they already have 5. And you can only do so much with air bases. I have reason to believe that they might be port facilities that could be used both by the Philippine Navy, the Philippine Coast Guard, and of course the United States Navy and the United States Marine Corps. So primarily because the nature of the environment is primarily maritime. So this would require, of course, ship visits, ports that could support any naval operation of the United States Navy, of course, along with the Philippine Navy and the Philippine Marines.
This will mean, Professor, a significant amount of investment then from the Americans to be able to develop these 4 strategic sites.
Yeah, of course, this is indication of the recognition of the strategic urgency in the region. Given, of course, China's aggressive action against, of course, Taiwan, which it considers as a renegade province. And we saw this last year during and the aftermath of Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, where we saw several military exercises being conducted by the Chinese armed forces. And, of course, the continuing tension in the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea, as China uses those artificial islands as basis of operation of the People's Liberation Army's Navy, the Chinese Coast Guard, and the Chinese Maritime Militia. And of course, those operations are directed against us. So I think this is just a logical response of a country that is, of course, being slowly pushed into the corner by China's maritime expansion.
So how soon do you think, Professor, will these 4 strategic sites be operational? In how many years?
I think it will take some time because, a year from now, EDCA is about to expire. So before, the Americans will pour in more money into the sites, both countries will have to talk about the possibility of extending EDCA. So again, after both sides had agreed that they will expand the EDCA sites, the agenda probably later this year is whether they will agree to extend EDCA, because EDCA was signed in 2014. It had only a 10-year duration. So this will be, again, how much money or the United States would put on developing those EDCA sites would again depend on whether the 2 countries, the 2 allies, will be able to agree to extend EDCA for another possibly 5 to 10 years.
All right, extend it. And of course, how much money on the table the Americans will put in developing these additional EDCA sites, and maybe much more. But how will this impact the country's relationship with China? I mean, we have the President, Bongbong Marcos, espousing an open foreign policy strategy, equal treatment with the Americans and the Chinese.
We can, because we have a treaty ally with the United States. So we have to give more importance to a country to whom we don't have any territorial dispute, and which we, of course, have a treaty alliance. And what no less than President Bongbong Marcos said, we have this long historical relationship. China, of course, we have long historical relationship, but at the same time, of course, the main challenge in terms of really making, our friendship bear fruits is the fact that we are locked in a territory. Yeah, what President Marcos said, I won't use the term territorial dispute. We don't have any territorial dispute with China. It's China that's basically intruding into our, maritime zone, into our exclusive,
briefly,
exclusive economic zone, despite the ruling of the arbitral tribunal that China's 9-line has no legal basis under international law.
So briefly, Professor, the Chinese may be calling now the president and say, you gave them these additional 4 EDCA sites. What will you give us back in return?
Basically, President Marcos said, we're a sovereign country. We have an alliance with the United States. We are entitled to do what's necessary to ensure our national security, our national interests. And, this is what I'm doing as the president of the Philippines. As what he said, I'm the president of the Filipino people. I neither serve Washington or, of course, Beijing. And I guess, his calculation in agreeing to expand U.S. military presence is his calculation that it serves Philippine national interests or the interests of the Filipino people.
Thank you so much for your insights. Political Science Professor Renato De Castro from De La Salle University.